Mount Juliet Board of Commissioners to hold a workshop here from 5:15 to 6 p.m. to discuss a presentation on a potential cell tower lease installation near North Mount Juliet Road at Charlie Daniels Park within the city of Mount Juliet. So the public is invited to attend and comment. So at this moment, I'd like to open the floor. If there's anyone here who would like to address the Board of Commissioners, this is your opportunity. We'll invite anyone from the public to come forward and address the board. All right, seeing no one from the public to address, we'll close citizen comments. This is called by our city manager, turn the floor to Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor, Board of Commissioners. Thank you for everybody in attendance, those watching from home. Vogue Towers reached out to the city some time back, and they've been working closely, I believe, with the police department and the fire department about enhancing our cellular service here in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. And one of the sites that we picked is actually the site for the new police department. And there's other places they could put it, but we felt like this might be a good opportunity for at least for the Board of Commissioners to hear what they're proposing. One of the questions I did ask, I think at one point part of our ordinance stated that had to be a disguised tower of some sort, but unfortunately, most of the disguised towers look worse than what a regular tower would. The only thing I did ask, and I asked them just this evening, was if it could possibly be powder coated, similar to our traffic signals and other poles around town. I think that makes it look a little bit better. But what I like about it is it's a partnership. We can put other users on it, like ham radio operators for emergency services. If you think of that, or you think of the rehab team, possibly if they needed communications, or other locals on it, in addition to police and fire. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to this gentleman here and have him come up and give his presentation, tell a little bit more about the tower.
So just take one of the seats up here if you don't mind. You can probably present a little better.
Make you more comfortable. These chairs are comfortable.
Can you give us your name and address to start with?
Good evening. My name is Michael Sandifer. Address is 4125 Coosa Drive, Cumming, Georgia.
All right. Take it away.
I am here representing Vogue Towers. I act as a project manager for Vogue Towers on the development of their sites. The president, Pat Tant, was supposed to be here tonight with me, but couldn't get here in time. So apologies for that. What this has been is Vogue Towers is essentially a vertical shopping center, a vertical property manager. If you can imagine taking a shopping center and turning it upright, when you see towers that have several different sets of antennas, that's what they do. They go out and build these sites for the carriers. This one in particular was from an interest that we've been working with for a while in this area to satisfy some needs for Verizon Wireless. Spent some time just south of here working with Wilson County Schools on this and another property in the county. And those fell through a few months ago, perhaps, fall. So I guess more than a few months now at this point. Started looking at this location, and I met with Travis Taylor back in the winter regarding the drone application that y'all are looking to launch, the drone system. And it became where it was something where it might be beneficial to the city as well as to Vogue/Verizon Wireless to be able to expand and improve coverage in the area, as well as a tall structure to mount the radar that has to go on the top of something for that drone application should that move forward. So we have started looking at that. Quite honestly, virtually everything in this general area has a tough time meeting the ordinance. You have your property line setbacks, and then you have a separation from residential, and everything to the north and the east is residential, which pushes it out from one location we presented. When I met with Travis, the location where this is obviously all outdated. Your new police station is here, and then that's all parking. The location on the west side, that square, is one that was actually offered or presented by the city at that time of could that work. Generally, what we're looking for is about 3,600 square feet. Like in a perfect world, a 60 by 60 square allows room for landscaping around the edges, and then we typically fence off about a 50 by 50 for multiple carriers to operate within. I can keep going, or if there's questions or anything in general, I'd love to just see what questions you might have as far as the potential of this moving forward.
Vice Mayor?
Sure. First of all, thanks for being here tonight, sir. So I have a couple of quick questions. First one is with the RF, is there going to be a survey prior to this? Is there any concerns there? Because again, I'm thinking if Wilson County schools didn't move forward with it, what was some of their concerns? And is there any readings that are going to be concerned for RF? Because I know things as they get higher, that's okay. But some of these antennas or let's just say antennas, they tend to project down lower. So that could be a concern as well. Is that correct?
Correct. But these are all high enough where there's no concern. And actually for the schools, we actually did a survey, an RF survey there. And it wasn't, the project fell through with the school primarily from just more of a public concern, public outcry. It wasn't necessarily that the schools didn't want to move forward as far as from a staff standpoint. We did do a survey at one point, and I can even send you that. But from a dissipation standpoint, from an RF standpoint, and the emissions, other than probably you'd have to be within 15, 20 feet of the antennas. So what we're proposing here potentially is a 150-foot pole. And if it was four carriers, your last carrier is potentially at about 85, 90 or somewhere around there, 75 feet. So you're still well above any of the threshold from an RF concern. To go any lower than that, the carriers just, it starts getting too low where they can't get over trees and various things. So it's ineffective for their needs. But there's no real concern from RF, and I'd be happy to even share what we have provided to the schools from an RF, that survey.
And then the other side of it, which is just because I'm thinking of long-term, the maintenance for decommissioning this equipment. So we know it's not abandoned and it could be a hazard. Is there any, again, I'm thinking long-term here. Is it something that you guys manage that, or do you guys push that out to a third party?
So Vogue Towers manages they own the site and they manage it, like I said, like a property manager, and the carriers are all responsible. Should they decommission the site for some reason or other, they're responsible for removing their equipment. And I believe I'd have to go back and ordinance. I think this ordinance, I believe you might have to put down a bond for the removal of the whole site. Should it become not used completely, there's some decommissioning language, I believe, in your ordinance that requires it to be taken down. And it might even be a bond that has to be put in place to ensure that happens. Okay.
And is this going to have a generator for backup?
I can't say for certain. I know a lot of the Verizon and AT&T, I know Verizon puts generators at a lot of their sites.
Yeah.
Not all of them, though. They do they have a survey just based on where everything's loaded in backup sites, on a countywide basis. So I can't say for certain, but there's probably at least a 50% chance, yes.
Well, I'm thinking about the neighbors behind it, again,
Sure.
Trying to be, if it's running at 3:00 in the morning because we drop power, obviously that's going to be a concern for them.
The only reason it would is, they just test it and cycle it once a month during the daytime. So the only reason it would fire up is these sites, pretty much everyone's using cabinetized sites. It looks like a bunch of refrigerators standing next to each other. The old days with shelters, we would have 24 hours of battery backup, at least inside the shelters. These don't have as long. So yes, in a time of a power outage, natural disaster, those types of things, the generator would run.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate any efforts to improve cell coverage. I hear that a lot about the city, that we're lacking of cell coverage in a lot of areas. I get a lot of the feedback on that. Sometimes I wonder how much our ordinances contribute to that lack of coverage. But I guess my one thing is please don't build one of those stupid looking fake pine trees that are, they draw more attention than just another, because you put up a monopole and it's just a pole.
Obviously I'm on the side of the wireless side. So I always tell people in zoning boards, you have to take it for what it is. My opinion, a monopine has certain applications where it's okay. We built one in Gatlinburg, but it has the backdrop of the mountains. And so once you get off the main drag there in Gatlinburg, I could point it to you. I could point out the area and you probably couldn't find it. I did another one in Farragut and tried to convince the mayor that they didn't want a 160-foot pine tree when there's no other pine trees that tall. Generally, a monopole, people will notice it for the first week or two, and then it disappears in the skyline because you're used to seeing towers around. If you do something trying to create a pine tree or a palm tree, something that doesn't blend in right to that environment, you're going to notice it forever.
I mean, I'd rather see a giant candy cane or something like that. At least it'd make us unique. Commissioner Lally.
Yeah, I understand the demand. It is the future. I get that. And there are spotty areas around the city, and it's very frustrating when you can't get anything on your phone. My concern is about the dangers of the 5G signals that, it's been talked about for years. There just aren't, I guess they're just so new. There aren't that many studies that's had time to complete. Really, I know there's a lot of stuff on social media about the fear. And then in areas where they're installed, you have people coming up with cancer and what have you. But then again, there's little evidence directly linking the towers. So then there's that. But it doesn't mean there's not anything to it. So that is a concern of mine as far as the placement, it being so close to the park. And with this right now, that's going to be the senior center. So just the placement of them for me is concerning. So what is your response to that about the dangers of 5G? And also, I was listening to it. Well, I also know there's some medical doctors who have taken it up to their state legislatures. I was listening to one in Michigan, for reasons to not pass a particular bill or whatever. So then I came across something called ionizing. What that is? Okay. That relates to like DNA damage and that kind of thing. So could you address those concerns?
Yes, ma'am. Well, hopefully. So ionizing is like your microwave oven. Cooks from the inside out. Wireless is non-ionizing, means there's no cumulative buildup of it. But you would not want to stand. I don't know if there's any. I don't know if y'all have any antennas on rooftops in the city here. Do you? So the FCC has regulations. They mandate from a federal level the amount of power and everything that can be done. And the FCC's regulations are 100 times higher than the regular limit. So it's very conservative. But you'll see if you've ever been on a rooftop that has wireless antennas, there's some signage they have to run tests and do signage. And they generally will mark off an area. If the antennas aren't overhanging the side or the penthouse, if they're there where they call it, I can't remember their wording, but it's essentially uneducated or everyday people that can get in front. They have to block off a certain area in front of any antenna. But those levels that they monitor are, again, like 100 times more than the actual human threshold. So it's a very conservative measurement, but there are those concerns. And so all the carriers have to abide by that. As far as the tower, since it's non-ionizing and it dissipates so quickly, and again, I'm happy, the survey we did for the school, I'm happy to send that, and it actually color maps it out, essentially the broadcasting from an antenna. And so that might help with the concerns there. The 5G, I don't know there's not a whole lot I can say because you can find all kinds of stuff on the internet. I just got stitches up the other day from some skin cancer and you can look on the internet. I looked the other day and, they're telling you some suntan lotion is bad. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? Just wear a hat all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the internet has, where my children are growing up now, can't understand the fact that you can't have an instant answer all the time. But the internet sometimes has a lot of information that's not necessarily true, just like social media. The government, FCC, manages all that. There were a lot of problems with some of the rollout of 5G and the FAA. You might have seen 2 years ago, maybe 2 springs ago, but it wasn't specifically 5G. It was actually what they called C-band, and it was the additional spectrum that was auctioned off by the FAA. That additional spectrum, when you look at a spectrum chart, was very close to what some airports were using. And so they were concerned about some interference with airplane equipment. That was worked out. It took several months. In fact, 2 years ago, in order for us to get an FAA approval for a site, it might take 8 or 9 months, where normally it's about 45 days. So everyone was working through that, and the government was dictating, when they would let you do anything and build, and they were coordinating those efforts. That's been alleviated completely, where there's no more delay or anything going on or any concerns there. But the 5G, we've gone through 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and most all of those, and now 5G are protocols that essentially all equipment manufacturers agree to on how the data is going to be transmitted. So I don't know if I've answered any of your questions or not, but I'm happy to share that an example of that survey where it'll show how quickly from a power standpoint. I also will tell you that as a licensed broadcaster, the AT&Ts of the world, the Verizons, they're all limited in the amount of power they can actually transmit with, wattage-wise. And your cell phones are all very limited on the power they actually use. I believe cell phones are somewhere around 0.6 of a watt. And if you've ever been talking a lot and you feel your phone heating up, that's because it's working so hard because the coverage is not great in the area, and it's overcompensating for a potential lack of coverage. If the coverage is ideal, in theory, your phone wouldn't be heating up. But at 0.6 of a watt, if anyone still has a landline, your cordless phone at home is a lot stronger than that.
Okay. So since these are not ionizing, does that mean they don't put off the radiation?
So certain wireless antennas are what they classify as non-ionizing. If you were to go hoist yourself up and hang right in front of the antenna, there could be issues right in front. That's why I was saying on the rooftop, they mark a boundary of safety. But the fact that it's non-ionizing versus like a microwave oven, there's no accumulation or buildup of it. You would have to go hang in front of the antenna for quite some time. If you walk away, versus if you were in a giant microwave oven, the damage is done. It is ionizing, so therefore it's accumulating. It's cumulative effort.
Okay. All right.
But it's going to be the carriers that are determining the frequency that they use, which is going to be based on what's been granted to them by the FCC.
Correct. What they have license for. A lot of AT&T and Verizon bid heavily on the C-band last year. Frequency, because of the growth and the exponential growth and all the capacity and usage, frequency is kind of like the modern day beach real estate.
Right.
There's only so much of it, and so they spend a fortune on it. So the original 800 megahertz from years ago, when you had just 2 cellular carriers, and that was in the 800 megahertz. That was, if you remember the TVs with the 2 dials, when you got the UHF, the original 800 megahertz was like channel 39 through 64 or something on the old dial. And that's what everyone started. So here years ago, you had Cellular One and I was with GTE MobileNet at the time, or Contel Cellular actually back in the day. So those names. Since then, they added, the FCC has auctioned off such a frequency, and they called some PCS, which got in the 1900, the C-band, which I think is in the 2,500 gigahertz range, maybe, or something like that. And so, yes, they're all limited on what they have, and that's all they can use.
But nobody's going to be throwing 2,500 or 2,500 gigahertz up on a tower 150 feet up in the air, probably.
It's not.
It's more small cell coverage.
Right. But they have to use what they have. You get down to the 800 megahertz, if they have ample.
Or Verizon can go down to
area,
700.
That's going to cover better and penetrate buildings, where that higher frequency is, the waves start going frequently and have very poor penetration to office buildings and things like that
Yeah.
in that tower.
I'll just say, from my standpoint, I would rather have antennas way up in the air,
Yes.
operating in large scale coverage like we're talking about, than the small cell that's generally used with the much higher frequencies for the 5G. But the protocol can work over any frequency that the carrier
Yes.
owns. Correct. Mr. Hefner, do you have some?
Appreciate you coming out.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a coverage map? I mean, if this goes through, where are how Verizon, for example, how broad is that new coverage from that one antenna? Is it, we're talking a half a mile, 2 miles?
So I didn't bring a coverage map tonight, but yes, we generally, from a zoning standpoint, the RF person, the RF engineer for this area would do what we call a propagation map or a prop map. And so we would have coverage explaining that. Generally, these sites nowadays, unfortunately, because of the usage, are only covering a half mile to a mile, from a radius.
So do we know that area within a half mile is in need of cellular capacity?
I don't, from a overall coverage. Once they would give me the prop maps, I could see I could sort of guesstimate what their next target might be. But I don't know that today. No, sir.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if it's overkill or overlap of what we already have coverage for. Maybe there's a different or better location where we need coverage within a half a mile. I know, just speaking from personal experience, I know the Green Hill area, this coverage is kind of low. But anyways, I was just curious if this is something, if we're solving a problem with it being there, or if it's just redundancy where we already have strong coverage. The other thing is, what is the wind rating on these towers? You're talking 150 feet in the air.
Right.
And I'm concerned about the buildings, where these two potential sites here, and the close proximity to the buildings and parking and things of that nature. What's the wind rating? Have any of them ever blown over? I mean,
well, I can't say that it will absolutely never happen, because I don't know that none. We generally design these with what's called a fall zone. And essentially what happens is we engineer, if you've ever had an umbrella shaft kink on you, or a golf club, that's basically how,
usually over my knee.
we should play golf then. What happens in the tower is we essentially design, whether it's at 50% or 60%, whatever it is, we design the bottom portion of that. We over design it, including the foundation. And so the tower essentially falls over on itself. It will kink similar to a golf club or that, and it will literally fall over. And you've seen them like after the hurricanes, where some of those towers did fail, but they collapse over on themselves, a self-support or a monopole like that. The TIA, their standards that are engineering standards govern the wind rating, and it just depends on where it is. Most of these here are probably, if I had to guess right here by this county, it's probably 105 mile an hour wind rating, and then a 30 mile an hour wind rating with a half inch of radial ice on it. And when they do that, when they drop it, that's assuming ice all over it. So you get closer to the coast and you might get the 120s, the 130 wind rating, goes higher. Go up north, it's going to be for more of the ice. It varies, TIA standards that govern it. And so basically what will happen is I'll do the design work, assuming this was to move forward. We'll do a geotech to see what the dirt is for our foundation design, and we send that all to tower manufacturers, and they come up with the actual tower design. Again, I'm speaking from the tower side of things.
Sure.
But I will tell you that if that tower were to come down, and I'm being truthful here, if that tower was to ever come down, you probably have far greater worries. These things survive. The Hurricane Michael, a couple summers ago, that did $25-30 billion of damage, and there were still towers standing everywhere. All through like Asheville, we lost one. I know that was on the bank, but the whole mountain just slid away,
Okay.
But they withstand a tremendous amount, and they're generally, the TIA standards are stricter, or not stricter. They are more stout than just regular building codes.
Okay. And on the business side of this, what's the city get out of this?
So I don't know if anyone has made a decision. I mean, assuming it moves forward, there's a decision on which way. Vogue offers two options generally in a proposal. One is if you prefer recurring revenue, a traditional ground lease that would have a monthly rent. Some people prefer like a lump sum payment, and so therefore they have an easement agreement for the ground that would just, at the time construction starts, it would just be a lump sum payment. I believe in the proposal they offered $125,000, I think, on the easement. But if you prefer the annuity type scenario, I think it's $1,000 a month with 1% annual increase. So over time, over a number of years, you might do better that way. Just depends on each property owner has different things they're looking for.
Okay. And I think I asked this question already. I'll ask it again. Have you looked at other locations besides
Yes. So we worked with the schools just south of there.
in Mount Juliet? Sorry, qualify that with. Mount Juliet.
Other locations?
Within within the.
I don't have any other active projects right now in the within Mount Juliet. We did a few years ago. We did the high school off Golden Bear.
Uh-huh.
Saying that right, Golden Bear? Okay. We did done Lebanon. I've done all around here. Built one at Lebanon High School, maybe last summer. We did in Hendersonville at the park at Drake Street Park. Done them all around. I don't have another active project right now in the city limits of Mount Juliet at the moment.
So how did these two locations come about? Are these ones that your company picked out, or how did these two?
On this property?
Yes.
So when we were looking here, and there was some interest from the city, and when I met with Mr. Taylor, he pointed out, and there was a page 2 of this. I don't know if that's on there. It was y'all's drawing.
Uh-huh.
He had marked a spot over in the corner of your new parking lot. And when I went and visited the site, I know that this is your current police and it's going to be the senior citizen center. But there was a large area of unused space behind the building.
Got it.
Typically, if I'm going to look for something, I try to put it out of the way where it's not going to be any kind of eyesore or right in your face type of thing. So I just thought that behind there made sense for a lot of reasons. I know that's close to the property line, which again gets us into some zoning challenges. But if it was behind there, it's fenced in. There was just ample real estate. It was the reason I picked the one on the east side.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's sure.
Commissioner Giles.
So I was looking at those two locations too. And while I know there's adequate real estate back there, I'm against that location, and I've not talked to the police department about it because I thought this whole thing coming to us was to enhance and increase emergency services. And I think that should be the priority for this, number one. That's just my opinion. But the reason that I don't like that location back there is because we own that property past there. And so that prohibits and limits us to any kind of expansion in that area if we ever want to. We're not going to do nothing in this corner up here except look at it. So that's why I would much rather be in this corner than over there just because of that. And in your illustration on that, I don't know if anybody on this board has taken that $1,000 and done the math, or taken the 125 and done a projection of say 4% interest. And if I'm not, that's just an average right now, probably on money. But if I'm not mistaken, it says that there would be 7 5-year terms, which would be 35 years. Is that not right?
Yes.
So 35 years, it would come back to this board to either renew it, et cetera. So we could look at both of those on the money to see which one brings us. I mean, I like reoccurring because we know it's coming in and we can use it. And not that there isn't, but it's, so I don't know. I think that's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mullally.
How many of these ever get struck by lightning, and what happens if one did here?
So the top of the pole, you can't see it in the images of the other pole because it's pretty small. Top of these towers have a lightning rod on them, and there's a grounding system all the way down. And so the lightning rod at the top usually is a 5-foot, looks like a piece of rebar, basically. And that's at the top. There's a grounding system that runs down the pole. And then each of these sites are installed with a ground ring system. And so essentially, if lightning were to hit it, everything would dissipate. There's a ground ring inside the fence, and everyone's equipment connects to the ground ring, and every so often there's a ground rod driven down in there. So they're very well grounded. I can't say that nothing would it's going to dissipate everything, but we generally don't have problems with lightning,
Okay.
even on a taller tower that would attract it.
Oh. All right.
Vice Mayor?
Just two quick questions. So if we do start looking at the front side, which is that smaller cube, based off of, like the location, which would be closer to the parking lots, you had mentioned, which, it does make sense, ice building up there, falling. I'm thinking parking lot, it could be a hazard to those cars down there. So I do see the green space being a better option, plus, versus hitting vehicles down below. But the other side of it is the infrastructure coming in. I know that they just, a provider wanted to go ahead and update some of the fiber optics that were coming into our community, which was then feeding into that tower. Is that a concern for you folks? Because again, I'm thinking the easements that's going to have to get from wherever from, the communication order to get that up there. So you're thinking it, again, I'm thinking of tearing up roads. If not, you guys are going to be probably, drilling that below, right?
If it was needed to come in, it would be bored. Y'all have got that parking lot done. My guess, and I don't know this until assuming this moved forward, we would do an engineering walk. But the fact that you just built a police station, I'm assuming you have a lot of power and a lot of fiber right there, so we wouldn't have to go far. We generally want an access and utility easement all the way out to the right of way so that we're not landlocked and have it out. Since there's an existing parking lot, we would just come over the parking lot, but we'd still have an easement from a legal standpoint. We would also make sure that and on the other drawing, I think the new police station has maybe a fenced in some kind of facility at that back corner closer to that western location. That may be your generator or something. I'm not exactly sure what was in there. But we would locate fiber. It could be that it's a very short run given all this development that y'all have done here recently. Power, there's not a lot of need. We generally ask for a 600 amp service from the power company. But now that people don't use shelters anymore and they're all cabinets, most of the carriers get 100 amp service.
So to go back to that ice situation, have you guys had any issues with them being so close to parking lots, things coming down and damaging vehicles?
No, the carriers each route their cabling. If you've ever seen it, we call it an ice bridge. And it's just some grated metal steel that they hang everything underneath it. And towers that are built in the north, they also can put like that type of graded plate somewhere on the tower to keep anything that was falling, kind of break it up. That could be an option too, if that's a concern. There are solutions that can be implemented there.
Okay. I think Art had a question.
Commissioner Giles?
You were saying something about the geotechnical. I had written that down too in my notes, but I didn't look at it a while ago. If y'all did find something that was karst down in there, y'all would remove that, the builder of this, and at your all's expense to make it correct. Is that right? Then whoever the company is that would be building it, if they found something that needed to be taken out and refilled, that would be at their expense.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
We do the geotechnical to find out. You get East Tennessee, it's a lot of rock. You get West Tennessee, it's soft. So we do a geotechnical on every site. If they were to encounter a lot of rock, then they would removing all of that, and it's all on the cost of Vogue Towers.
So we wouldn't have any of that cost. And then,
Oh no, you won't. You should not have any cost of any of it.
And then I was thinking about the ice situation, and you were describing that, and I'm trying to understand it. And what we call in the roofing systems for like insurance is like, we call it snow guards. Is that the same thing? Like a lot of places up north have it coming out of the roof. We do here in the south in certain areas.
So yes, you could mount on the actual monopole itself, partway down or just under where the antennas are. You can mount it's just grated steel basically. And so anything would fall would kind of hit that and crumble, shatter.
Mr. Mullally?
2 questions. Why 2 towers and not 1?
On the locations?
Uh-huh.
Oh, just one. It was just 2 options.
Oh, 2 options of
locations on the
placement?
property for placement.
Oh,
Just one, I'm sorry.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. Got you.
And this one, I mean, the one to the west, which I believe Commissioner Giles, or one of, obviously closer to the new police station, which I believe covers pretty much all of parcel 09 and 07 there, would be closer from routing any of your communication, not only the drone, but if police and fire wanted communications there, would be closer to that building as far as routing to their equipment. That's where it was coming from.
All right. Vice Mayor?
All right, so is it possible to go ahead and if we do need to install anything on it, is there any way that we wouldn't have to pay the real estate for that since we're already, be like a good partnership, right?
So I believe part of the proposal was Vogue Towers is letting not only the drone, but your police and fire, your EMA, whatever, rent free.
Rent free?
The only thing we'd have to get to is space on the tower. I mean, if you want to go at the same exact place as someone, we'd have to work on any kind of separation needs your equipment might have. And thinking long term, if it was all loaded up, we'd have to maybe consider structural, down the road. But yes, no rent.
No rent for us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you would be able to just go ahead and make sure it's in the contract for the steel grading, just to be proactive.
Mhm.
Just make sure that, and then is it worded in there that we would have full rights for I guess basically rent free?
That was in the proposal. They're typically what they do with jurisdictions, just from a liability, is enter into some kind of lease and just have a $0 amount or a $1 or whatever it might have to be legally, just in case your people went on and did something. But they let police and fire on free.
Okay.
City Manager?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioner, thank you so much for taking time this evening to hear this proposal out. I'll take some responsibility for this. When Mr. Taylor, of course, police and fire departments, we met and talked about it. We saw this as a great opportunity for not only for the city because letting us piggyback on the tower for $1 a year or whatever it may be, but also for we were talking about like the ham radio operators and all, because if you were to lose everything and you had them as well, it just gives us another form of communication. And selfishly, the rent option and also or the one lump sum payment, I want to get that in front of you. The plan would be, if this is something that the commission is open to, would be to meet with them about a contract or a lease and bring that back to the Board of Commissioners for consideration.
All right.
And I want to thank the police, fire, and Mr. Taylor for their assistance and vision.
Well, I would just say if anybody's got any concerns, send them to the city manager. And if there's nothing else, we're almost at time.
Definitely a win-win.
All right.
Thank y'all for your feedback.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Without objection, we're adjourned. Hearing none.